The media often represents teenagers as troublemaking, careless, and selfish individuals who smoke, drink, and take drugs, but this is hugely generalized. This exploits the negative side of teenage life and pushes them down to the bottom of social hierarchy, alienating them. One way this happens is through gender and gendered norms. Women's advertising is a trick, photoshopped and perfected to make you feel imperfect and flawed. These representations in the media have a huge impact on teenage girls' self-image. In Naomi Wolf's book, The Beauty Myth, she tells us that the idealized female body image is unattainable and in reality is physically and psychologically damaging to women. At only 10 years old, 81% of girls experience the fear of being fat. Who can blame them when Kate Moss promotes the catchphrase, "Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels," and are bombarded with advertisements of skinny and sexualized women, giving out the message that to be happy and successful, we must be thin. Susan Bordeaux's book, Unbearable Weight, looks closely at the normality of Western society's female body construction, such as cosmetic surgery and obsessive dieting. It also states that eating disorders can't just be defined from mental and physical standards, but must also be viewed from a cultural context. Eating disorders is not uncommon in teenage life. Anorexia is the third most common chronic illness among adolescents. Most of my female friends have or had eating disorders. This isn't to say that men don't suffer from eating disorders, but the percentage of college males that struggle with it is only 4 to 10%. As the media drag down your self-esteem, they tap into your unconscious desires so you buy their commodities to fix your body, skin, or hair. Karl Marx would call these false needs, as we don't really need them, but we follow commodity fetishism to make us feel better about ourselves. But buying products to bolster our identity is short-lived, and soon we need to do it again, ensuring the cycle of consumerism continues, which ultimately only maintains capitalist ideology. The whole process is a vicious cycle of unrealistic body types, feeding off women's low self-esteems to make money. As the schoolgirls crowd around the bathroom mirror at lunchtime, advertisements will know they have done their job in selling insecurities. We buy objects that we desire in order to fulfill the identity we want to present ourselves with. It's not just advertising that creates this ideal look, but also social media websites such as Tumblr, which is mainly used by teenagers. Websites such as this have a constant flow of photos or texts uploaded. Some of these photos represent the ideal body type. Pages filled with thigh gaps and flat stomachs. There are also a lot of blogs that glorify anorexia, self-harm, and depression. But Tumblr also gives insight into today's cultural issues, particularly feminism, and warns us that society's representations are false. An anonymous Tumblr user known as Ambivalently Yours posts that are online. Each drawing shares a body-positive feminist message such as less starving, more strutting. I asked them, how do you think the media impacts today's teenagers? Their response was, I asked Ambivalently Yours Tumblr user, how do you think society impacts today's teenagers? I also asked my friend Annabelle, who studies media, how do you think the media in society impacts today's teenagers?
Media and society influence teenagers because you've got the media that's aimed towards teenagers, which is telling them how they should live their lives and giving them expectations, things that they think they should do and how they should be. And then you've got the media that talks about teenagers, that's saying how they're lazy, how they don't do anything. And then alongside that, so they're getting all these influences from different places, not knowing where to turn. They're growing up, so they're changing, developing, having their own emotional struggles to deal with because growing up's difficult. And the older generation, like society, don't really understand it as much because they had to grow up in a completely different time. They didn't necessarily have the same goals and morals and things that teenagers nowadays have to do. So I think that's why it's quite difficult for them as well to place themselves into a society that they don't really feel understands them.
It's not just females who are harmed by the psychological damage of the media and society. Of the 5,981 suicides in 2012, 4,590 of them were men. It appears a bit of a shock, but the pressure for men to be masculine and strong leaves them with the inability to cry in case of appearing weak, gay or feminine. So men stop talking about their feelings, pushing it to the back of their mind and kill themselves. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for Ecology for ages between 12 and 18 of both genders. Girls aren't the only target of the media's gender representations, and it's damaging teenagers of both genders. Sigmund, who wrote the book Body Wars, said boys are taking steroids and creating pills and spending too long in the gym. He blames the media for unnaturally thin female models and exaggerated muscular male bodies. Whereas sufferers blame exam pressure and feelings of isolation, so they use starving or working out as a coping method. Whichever's at fault, I'm sure the media's representations are nothing but encouragement for sufferers and gives out a twisted message for those yet to come. There has been a huge rise in young mental health problems in the last 5 years. This generation is different from the other generations. We are brought up by pure media, watching Disney princesses, television and using computers from a young age, being spoon-fed messages about how we should look and how we should be. This led to a ton of pressure on young people to conform to something unimaginable. A Get Connected helpline survey says that only 1 in 20 parents considered physical or mental health problems such as suicide, self-harm and eating disorders to be major issues facing young people. Yet 1 in 6 of young people cited these as problems. As well as this, 42% of parents thought that drugs were the main issue, but only 19% of teenagers said it was an issue. The main issue teenagers call in about is housing or running away. In the UK, if you're an adult renting a room, house or flat, you will be given notice before having to leave. This does not apply to teenagers living with their parents, who can be kicked out at any moment for whatever reason. This is why charities such as the Key Foyer and Street Smart generate funding for homeless young people. Teenagers fall awkwardly between the binary opposites of children and adults. Growing up is strange, being forced to make decisions about your future, going through puberty, as well as many social issues such as drinking, smoking and drugs, let alone the common issues for teenagers such as anorexia, anxiety and depression. A lot of today's teenage angst is triggered by the pressure on students during exams and coursework. This is without even considering individuals' home and personal lives. It's a struggle for society to look at teenagers with eyes unclouded by the media's representations. And whether these representations are positive or negative is only a scratch on the surface of what life is really like as a teenager. It's not just advertising that creates this ideal look, but also social media websites such as Tumblr, which is mainly used by teenagers. Websites